Someone asks how you're doing, you say fine. They ask what you're feeling, you say nothing much. They try to get closer, and you pull back, not because you don't have feelings. You do, deep ones, but sharing them feels impossible, dangerous. Wrong, so you keep everything inside, process alone, handle your emotions privately, and people think you're cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable, but you're not empty. You're just guarded if you don't share your feelings, and can't quite explain why this is for you. Not sharing your feelings doesn't mean you don't have them. It doesn't mean you're emotionally stunted or incapable of depth. It means your nervous system has learned that keeping feelings private is safer than expressing them. Where other people feel relief from talking about their emotions, you feel exposure, vulnerability, risk. Your brain doesn't register emotional sharing as connection, it registers it as threat. And that's not coldness, that's protection. Some people process emotions externally. They need to talk, share, verbalize to make sense of what they're feeling. But your system works differently. You process internally. Your feelings are real and present, but they unfold in private. Sharing them doesn't help. It just opens you up to judgment, misunderstanding, or having your emotions used against you. This isn't about being closed off. It's about how your nervous system learned to stay safe. For many people who don't share feelings, the pattern started in childhood. When you expressed emotions, sadness, fear, excitement, anger, they were dismissed, minimized, or punished. You're too sensitive. Stop crying. That's not a big deal. Get over it. So your nervous system learned a painful lesson. Feelings aren't safe to show. Emotional expression leads to rejection, shame, or being told you're wrong for feeling what you feel. The solution: stop sharing. Keep everything inside where it can't be invalidated. Psychologists call this emotional invalidation, and it doesn't require dramatic abuse. It happens in ordinary families where caregivers were uncomfortable with emotions, too busy to attune, or dismissive without realizing the impact. Over time, you learn that your feelings don't matter to others, so you stopped offering them. And now, as an adult, sharing feels like handing someone ammunition, because historically, that's what it was. There's also the wound of past vulnerability. Maybe you opened up once, shared something real, raw, tender, and it was used against you. Laughed at, dismissed, thrown back in your face during an argument, shared with others without permission. That experience taught your nervous system that vulnerability equals danger. Opening up doesn't create connection, it creates risk. So you closed down, built walls. Decided that keeping feelings private is the only way to protect yourself from being hurt again. This is what psychologists call a vulnerability hangover, the shame and regret that comes after opening up. For some people, sharing brings relief. For you, it brings dread. You replay what you said, worry how it'll be used, wish you'd stayed silent. So now you don't share. Not because you're incapable, but because you've learned the cost is too high. Many people who don't share feelings developed profound emotional self-sufficiency. You learned early that depending on others for emotional support doesn't work. They weren't available. They didn't understand, they made it worse. So you figured out how to handle everything alone. This created a pattern: process internally, solve your own problems, carry your emotions privately. And it works. You're incredibly capable of managing difficult feelings without external help. That's a real strength, but it also means that sharing feels unnecessary, even intrusive. You've built an entire internal system for processing emotions. Bringing someone else in doesn't add value, it just disrupts your process. You're not avoiding feelings, you're handling them, just privately. The challenge is that people read your self-sufficiency as coldness. They think you don't need anyone, but it's not that you don't need, it's that you've learned not to depend. There's also the belief that your feelings are too much, too intense, too complicated, too heavy. You don't want to burden people with your emotional reality, so you minimize, downplay, keep things light and manageable on the surface. This often comes from experiences where your emotions overwhelmed someone, a parent who couldn't handle your sadness, a friend who pulled away when you needed support, a partner who said you're too much, so you learn to make yourself smaller, easier, less emotionally demanding. The irony is that you can hold space for others' feelings easily. You're often the one people come to, but you don't extend the same permission to yourself. Your emotions feel like an imposition, so you carry them alone to avoid being a burden. But emotions aren't a burden. They're part of being human, and the people who matter can hold them. Sometimes it's not that you can't share, it's that there's no one safe to share with. You look around and see no one who's proven trustworthy with tender things. Past sharing led to gossip, judgment, or dismissal, so you're waiting. For someone who's earned access to your inner world, this is different from inability. It's discernment. You're not closed, you're selective. And in a world where people often don't know how to hold emotions without fixing, judging, or making it about themselves, being selective makes sense. The problem is that people mistake your caution for coldness. They think you don't open up to anyone, but the truth is more specific. You don't open up to people who haven't shown they can handle it. That's not dysfunction, that's wisdom. The cost is loneliness. Waiting for safe people means potentially waiting a long time, and carrying everything alone gets heavy. For some people, not sharing feelings isn't about fear or protection. It's simply how they're wired. Their emotional processing happens internally. Verbalizing feelings doesn't provide relief. It feels forced, performative, unnecessary. Where extroverted processors need to talk through emotions to understand them, you understand yours through internal reflection. Sharing doesn't clarify, it disrupts. Your system is built for solitary emotional work. And that's not dysfunction, it's variation. This creates friction in a world that assumes emotional sharing is healthy and necessary. Therapy culture, self-help advice, relationship expectations all push toward verbal emotional expression. But for some nervous systems, that's not the pathway to processing. Silence is. The challenge is that people read your silence as withholding. They think you're hiding, but you're not. You're just processing in a language they don't speak. Here's what changes everything. Not sharing your feelings isn't a character flaw. It's an adaptation to your specific history and wiring. Your nervous system learned that emotional privacy is safer than exposure. That's intelligent, not broken. You're not cold for protecting yourself. You're not emotionally unavailable for having boundaries around tender things. You're not stunted for processing internally rather than verbally. Some people need to share to feel connected. That's one way of being. You need privacy to feel safe. That's a different way. Neither is superior. They're different adaptations to different needs and histories. Understanding this shifts you from shame about being closed off to recognition that you're being protective. And protection, after a history that taught you emotional expression is dangerous, makes perfect sense. The question isn't, what's wrong with me for not sharing? It's, what did my nervous system learn that makes privacy feel necessary? There are costs. People misunderstand you. Relationships stay surface level. Intimacy is limited. You carry everything alone, and that weight accumulates. People who want closeness with you feel shut out. Opportunities for deep connection pass by because you can't access vulnerability. Those are real losses, and they matter, but there are also gifts. You have profound emotional self-sufficiency. You don't fall apart when alone. You can handle difficult feelings without external validation. You're not at the mercy of others' availability or understanding. You've built internal resilience most people never develop. And perhaps most importantly, you have boundaries. You don't give everyone access to your inner world. You protect what's tender. That's dignity, not dysfunction. The work, if you choose it, isn't about forcing yourself to share. It's about slowly, carefully finding people who have earned access. And learning that selective vulnerability isn't the same as being closed. If you don't share your feelings, you're not alone. There are many people who keep their emotional reality private, not from emptiness, but from protection, wisdom, or simply different wiring. You're not cold for having boundaries around vulnerable things. You're not broken for processing internally. You're not emotionally unavailable for choosing carefully who gets access to tender parts of you. Your feelings are real, even when private. Your depth exists, even when protected. And your way of moving through emotions, quietly, internally, carefully, is valid. Different but not deficient, just another way of being human.